For years, a different kind of war has been raging beneath Mexico's sun-scorched towns. Drug cartels have perfected the art of subterranean fortresses, complete with reinforced bunkers and ventilation. Even the most sophisticated authorities failed to breach these fortresses. But now U.S. weapons have turned the tide, and the safe haven turned into hell on earth. How did the cartels build such impenetrable fortresses? And can modern military technology finally bring them down? Join us as we unravel how the cartel bunkers were destroyed in Mexico. Mexican authorities have been waging a deadly battle against drug cartels for nearly 2 decades, but with limited success. Thousands of Mexicans, including politicians, students, and journalists, die in the conflict every year. The country has seen more than 460,000 homicides since 2006, when the government declared war on the cartels. The United States has partnered closely with its southern neighbor in this fight, providing Mexico with billions of dollars to modernize its security forces, reform its judicial system, and fund development projects aimed at curbing irregular migration. Washington has also sought to stem the flow of illegal drugs into the United States by bolstering security and monitoring operations along its border with Mexico. Over the decades, the cartels have grown, splintered, forged new alliances, and battled one another for territory. The 2 cartels that pose the most significant drug trafficking threats to the United States, according to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, are the Sinaloa Cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. Formerly led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, Sinaloa is one of Mexico's oldest and most powerful drug trafficking groups with considerable influence in the Mexican government and public institutions. In addition to fentanyl trafficking, the group engages in extortion, migrant smuggling, oil and mineral theft, prostitution, and the weapons trade. With strongholds in nearly half of Mexico's states, particularly those along the Pacific coast in the northwest and near the country's southern and northern borders. In operations in at least 47 countries, it has a larger international footprint than any of its Mexican rivals. El Chapo is who he is for a reason. He has invented new ways of hiding and carrying out his business underground. Last year in Culiacan, he evaded Mexican Marines by disappearing into a network of subterranean passageways connecting 7 houses. He did not invent smuggling tunnels. Bank robbers, rum runners, and guerrillas had used them for decades. But his criminal enterprise built the first cross-border narco tunnel in 1989. Since then, Sinaloa has refined the art of underground construction and has used tunnels more effectively than any criminal group in history. In the past quarter century, officials have discovered 181 illicit passages under the U.S.-Mexico border. Most have been short, narrow gopher holes, just big enough for a person to crawl through. Sinaloa specializes instead in infrastructural marvels that federal agents call super tunnels. Agents estimate that a single super tunnel takes several months and more than $1 million to build. Many include elevators, electric lights, ventilation ducts, and cleverly disguised entry and exit shafts. They can reach as deep as 70 feet, and they tend to be tall enough for an adult to walk or ride through. These days, most of Sinaloa's super tunnels are used to ferry drugs across the border, from Garita de Otay, an industrial neighborhood in northern Tijuana, to Otay Mesa, a similar area in southern San Diego. Otay Mesa, which is bounded on the north by Brownfield Municipal Airport and on the south by Mexico, consists of highways, strip malls, and a few hundred warehouses clustered near the border. Most super tunnels terminate inside these warehouses, making them difficult to detect. El Chapo was extradited to the U.S., where he's currently serving life imprisonment. But cartel operations are not showing any signs of slowing down. If anything, they are increasing their modes of operation, and strangely or not, they seem to be succeeding. But how long will they last in the face of the Trump administration? On January 20th, 2025, the underground world of Mexican cartels changed forever, and they found themselves perpetually staring at the guillotine. With a stroke of his pen, President Trump signed an executive order declaring these criminal organizations a national security threat beyond traditional organized crime. Initially, it seemed like mere words on paper, but when it fully sank in, it became clear that it was a declaration of war that changed everything overnight. By February 19, The Trump administration took it a step further by officially designating 8 Latin American cartels, including 6 from the neighboring country, Mexico, as foreign terrorist organizations for their major roles in drug smuggling and human trafficking into the United States. The move marks a major escalation in the administration's efforts to cripple the cartels, as an FTO designation grants the administration access to enhanced counterterrorism authorities, such as the ability to launch covert operations authorized by the president. The FTO designation came only days after the Mexican Senate approved the presence of the U.S. Army's 7th Special Forces Group to conduct joint training with Mexico's elite Naval Marine Corps. The designated groups are now on hot seats as it is now obvious that effort would be intensified to nab them. And as if to prove that point, President Trump has signed a directive to the Pentagon to begin using military force against certain Latin American drug cartels that his administration has deemed terrorist organizations, according to people familiar with the matter. The decision to bring the American military into the fight is the most aggressive step so far in the administration's escalating campaign against the cartels. It signals Donald Trump's continued willingness to use military forces to carry out what has primarily been considered a law enforcement responsibility to curb the flow of fentanyl and other illegal drugs. The order provides an official basis for the possibility of direct military operations at sea and on foreign soil against cartels. U.S. military officials have started drawing up options for how the military could go after the groups. The people familiar with the conversation said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss the sensitive internal deliberations. The drug lords responded to the designation, and it was in a way no one expected. Their reply to the U.S. was to go underground, literally burying themselves beneath the surface. Like the military, the Mexican cartel has now introduced the use of bunkers to keep themselves safe. Actually, the bunker idea isn't entirely new to them. Rafael Caro Quintero, a former kingpin in the ring of drug operations, started the use of bunkers to hide from authorities. The bunkers that the cartels have built aren't simple hiding spots. They are sophisticated safe houses hidden underground. They have reinforced concrete walls, advanced ventilation systems, emergency escape tunnels, and communication equipment that can withstand government raids. Remember Sinaloa and CJNG? Well, they're at the center of the bunker operations. It was in Sinaloa state that authorities fully understood the ingenuity of these criminals. They discovered a bunker complex hidden beneath what could barely pass as a farmhouse. There was a water trough just in front of the entrance, and the push of a button caused it to move aside, revealing the entrance. Sounds awesome, but the interior is even more astonishing. Inside the bunker, authorities found living quarters, safe room for keeping weapons, and a command center with multiple computer systems and satellite phones that could rival a modern military mini-command center. To add to that, they even had a medical bay for treating wounded cartel members. That way, they wouldn't have to expose themselves to the public. The CJNG, on the other hand, built similar fortifications in the state of Jalisco. Their bunkers were slightly different from the ones in Sinaloa, as they were built to connect to tunnel systems that allowed for quick escapes across large distances. One discovered tunnel stretched nearly a mile, emerging in a safe house several neighborhoods away from its entrance. El Chapo really outdid himself. The persistence of these underground sites enabled the cartels to disrupt trade routes, intimidate communities, and maintain pressure on the Pacific Corridor, amplifying the economic impact of their operations. Each unresolved bunker was simply a liability and an ongoing threat to national and regional security. But there was an additional problem that further complicated matters. The cartel was smart enough to build its fortified sites near residential areas. This crazy tactic limited strike options because if the military went with conventional bombing, they risked significant collateral damage and public backlash. At this point, what is needed is real precision. If the military must attack the bunkers, they had to do it in a way that civilians wouldn't suffer any damage. The strikes had to reach deep, reinforced targets while minimizing harm to surrounding civilian infrastructure. Previously, they just had to bomb the targets and the surroundings through mass raids and heavy ordnance, but now that method was limited. If they tried it this time, it would be ineffective, and in addition to collateral damage, buried command centers might just lose communications for a short time, only to resume operations days later. The cycle of destruction and reconstruction would drain resources and erode confidence in the effectiveness of standard tactics. With all that fortification and strategic positioning, the cartel seemed to be in a favorable position, almost untouchable by neither the Mexican Marines nor the U.S. Navy. But they were wrong. Little did they know that the USS Harry Truman had already deployed its FA-18 Super Hornet. Perhaps the answer to these fortified underground bunkers is a weapon that could reach them with surgical precision, and that's where the Joint Standoff Weapon Variant C comes in. The JSOWC has emerged as the mouth-needed solution to target and obliterate fortified underground bunkers. With its 1,650-pound weight, it was designed to carry out missions where conventional airstrikes fail. Its aerodynamic design allows it to travel up to 70 miles from the point of launch, enabling aircraft like the FA-18 Hornet to remain safely outside hostile air defense zones while still engaging deeply buried targets. In the early hours of March 28, as the Pacific Ocean swayed with the gentle breeze, the first strike packages moved across the sky in absolute silence. Split into two formations, the FA-18, loaded with the JSOWCS, headed straight for the supposedly impregnable bunkers. And that was the beginning of Operation March 28. There have been multiple operations in Mexico against cartel members, but this very operation unfolded with a level of precision that set it apart from every other. In less than 10 minutes, the FA-18 delivered JSOW strikes against 3 major Mexican cartel sites. The assault was designed to disrupt command structures, sever logistics, and neutralize the underground assets that the cartels so heavily relied on to sustain their operations along the coast of the Pacific Ocean. The first target was the Sinaloa bunkers. Although it was built to withstand attacks from airstrikes, this was no regular airstrip, and the JSOWC was no ordinary weapon. As it defended, its guidance system made final adjustments to its course, ensuring a direct hit. The warhead penetrated layers of concrete and directly ignored the reinforced steel, tearing through it like it was nothing, detonating deep inside the structure. The headquarters collapsed almost instantly, erasing a command post that had previously survived multiple conventional strikes. At the same time, coalition aircraft targeted other bunkers in CJNG. These facilities that El Chapo concealed among residential neighborhoods housed large quantities of missiles, drones, and ammunition. This is where the JSOW's penetrating ability came in handy. Each of the strikes had to destroy the targets without endangering the citizens nearby or attracting collateral damage. The result was just as expected. Explosions lit up the place, destroying missiles and drones while leaving the surroundings intact. One critical moment in the operation was the strike on a bunker buried 20 feet below the surface level and camouflaged against aerial surveillance. This was a major headquarters from which the drug lords ran major operations. The JSOWC, guided by infrared sensors and GPS, identified a hidden air vent, which was the only vulnerability of the bunker. The weapon easily penetrated through this vent and detonated inside, obliterating everything in its path and severing the command center. The destruction of this command center was a huge blow to the cartel's coordination, disrupting their ability to launch complex attacks. Just how powerful is the JSOW-1 to wreak such havoc in cartel strongholds? The U.S. Navy's most accurate warship killer, JSOWC, one operational on FA-18 fighters. The U.S. Navy has completed arming its McDonnell Douglas FA-18EF Super Hornets aboard its fleet of Nimitz-class aircraft carriers with the new Joint Standoff Weapon, the Navy's first air-to-ground network-enabled weapon that can identify and sink fast-moving enemy warships. The precision-guided weapon uses GPS technology, inertial measurement unit guidance technology, and an imaging infrared seeker in the final phase of flight to find and attack enemy warships. The JSOWC moving maritime target capability allows the missile to fly to an updated cue from its controlling platform and later transition to an image recognition scene matching process enabled by an onboard database of ship characteristics stored in the weapon. JSOWC achieved operational status in June 2016 and is now deployed with all the Navy's carrier air wings. CVWS network-enabled technology gives the FA-18 Super Hornet a vastly increased attack envelope against a wider range of threats, such as enemy warships, small boats, and submarines at sea. JSOWC will also be fired from the Navy's carrier-launched variant of the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35C. This highly accurate glide weapon is specifically designed to destroy maneuvering, high-speed warships such as modern destroyers at longer distances. It also allows direct attack on enemy air defenses, contesting U.S. Navy attack aircraft. The C-1 is an air-to-surface, standoff from point defense weapon used against a variety of targets. Older versions of the C-1 arm all U.S. Navy attack aircraft, and this weapon's success in combat since it was first used in 1998 has made it one of the most successful weapons in the Pentagon's history. The basic JSOW, or the AGM-154, is a low-cost, highly lethal glide weapon with a standoff capability. The JS family of air-to-surface glide weapons are 450 kilograms bombs that provide a standoff of 28 kilometers at low-altitude launch and up to 110 kilometers at high-altitude launch. JSOW is a fire-and-forget weapon that employs a coupled GPS-INS navigation system. The C-1 model is integrated with the Link 16 network radio, allowing the weapon to attack moving maritime targets. A two-way data link allows the FA-18EF and F-35C launch aircraft, or another controller, to provide real-time target updates to the weapon, shift it to a different target, or abort the mission. It is armed with the new broach warhead, a two-stage warhead. The initial stage uses a shaped charge to bore a narrow tunnel through up to 6 feet of reinforced concrete or 3 feet of steel. This penetration is not the end goal, but rather the entry point for the weapon's main warhead. Once inside, the second stage detonates, generating a pressure wave of 5,000 per square inch, enough force to collapse internal structures and neutralize personnel or material within a 30-meter radius. Thousands of steel fragments are dispersed in the blast, maximizing internal destruction and increasing the likelihood of secondary explosions if munitions or fuel are present inside the bunker. Unlike earlier generations of bunker-busting munitions, which often relied on sheer explosive mass and repeated sorties, the JSOWC delivers precision and efficiency in a single strike. A defining feature of the JSOWC is its advanced infrared, IR seeker, which activates roughly 30 seconds before impact. This system scans the target area, detecting subtle temperature differences that reveal vents, entry points, or concealed structures invisible to other guidance methods. During the strike on the headquarters bunker, for instance, the IR seeker identified a small camouflaged air vent. This last 30-second infrared scan gave operators a final course correction critical for zero-margin targeting. The ability to distinguish genuine targets from decoys or camouflage ensures that the JSOWC's payload is delivered with maximum effect and minimal risk of error. While it cannot be denied that Mexico has tried to solve the cartel puzzle, they have failed in its attempts because, unlike the U.S. that does not negotiate with terrorists, Mexico prefers to employ diplomacy in dealing with the issue, a method that has consistently failed. And now Mexico is under pressure from the U.S. government to do something. Quite recently, the government of Mexico sent more than 24 suspected cartel members to the U.S. amid rising pressure from President Donald Trump on Mexico to dismantle the country's powerful drug organizations. They shipped 26 prisoners, who the U.S. wanted for ties to drug trafficking groups, Mexico's Attorney General's office and Security Ministry said in a joint statement. According to them, the U.S. Department of Justice had requested their extradition after promising that it would not seek the death penalty for the accused cartel members. Surprisingly, this transfer is not the first of its kind. It's the second of its kind this year. Earlier in February, Mexican authorities sent 29 alleged cartel leaders to the U.S., and that sparked a debate about the political and legal grounds for such a move. The fact that President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico permitted yet another large-scale extradition of Mexican nationals shows just how much pressure the country is under as she seeks to appease Trump while also avoiding further unilateral U.S. military action in Mexico. According to a statement issued by the U.S. Embassy, among those extradited were key figures in the JNGC and the Sinaloa cartel, which are Mexico's two dominant organized crime groups. Trump has tied tariffs on Mexico to the deadly fentanyl trade, claiming the country hasn't tackled drug cartels aggressively enough. Last week, he directed the Pentagon to prepare operations against Mexican drug gangs that have been designated global terrorist organizations. Some people believe that the U.S. and Mexico are nearing a security agreement to expand cooperation in the fight against cartels. But there's still debate on whether unilateral action by the U.S. military in Mexico is a good idea. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.